This question goes on for quite a bit here. We're going to do two quotient simplifications, and then after we do those, we're going to have to get common denominators. So let's just jump right in. So the first fraction here says 1 plus I over I. So we're going to simplify that by multiplying by I over I. So if you are looking for the conjugate of this, there is no real conjugate here because there's no A plus BI, it's just I. So if you ever have I or BI, the conjugate is just BI or whatever the thing is. That's just the imaginary part. So I times 1 is I, and then I times I is I squared, and then I times I in the denominator is I squared. Now, as we've spoken in several other videos, I squared is simply -1. This I squared here is simply -1. So we have, rewriting it now in the real number part is -1, and then the imaginary part is this I. So just rearrange that in the order, and then I divide by -1. Now if you want to, you can go ahead and distribute this negative to make this thing not be a fraction anymore if you like. So you would have, what I'm saying here is you'd have -1 plus I over 1. Right, we just simply move the negative in the 1 that was in the denominator up to here. So when you have -1 plus I, then that means you have 1 minus I. So that whole thing right there simplifies to 1 minus I. Now the next one is 6 over 7 minus I. Now here we do need to use the conjugate, is 7 plus I. So we're going to do 6 times 7 is 42, and then 6 times I is 6I. Then the denominator, we'd have 7 times 7 is 49. Now I'm not going to write these steps because I realize I've done this a couple of times now. This step and this step cancel. 7I and then -7I, that always cancels. That's why we multiply by a conjugate, in fact. And then I'm left with -I times I, which is -I squared. And again, this I squared is -1, so 49 minus -1 means that the denominator becomes 50, and we have 42 plus 6I. Now, in none of the videos yet have I shown you this, but here this occurs. If all these numbers are divisible by a common factor, then we can simplify this, and I realize that all these numbers are even, so I can divide this by 2, divide that by 2, and divide that 6 by 2. So now I have 21 over 25 plus 3 over 25I. So now we have the disgusting task of combining the real parts of these two numbers and the imaginary parts of these two numbers. And I say it's disgusting because they're fractions, and we all hate fractions, right? So the first thing to keep in mind here is that this is a subtraction. So I've set up my two real parts from the two different numbers. So I have 1 minus 21/25. So I can rewrite 1 as a fraction as 25 over 25. And I'm going to subtract 21 over 25, and that will give me 4 over 25 will be the real part of my answer. And now for the imaginary part, I'm going to subtract, and likewise I have -I, so I'm going to rewrite that as -25 over 25I, and I'm going to subtract 3/25 I. So -25 minus 3 means that this is -28/25 I. So we can write our final answer as 4/25 minus 28/25 I. Alright, so I said this was kind of a disgusting problem, but it's really not that bad.
Oh, stop it, you. It wasn't that bad.